welcome to Maunalua, Past, Present, and Future. My name is Anne-Marie Kirk, and I serve as a cultural advisor to Livable Hawaii Kai Hui. I'm also the founder of Maunalua.net. Thank you so much for joining us on part 2 of our Cultural Treasure Show. And I'm here with a cultural treasure, and that is Mr. DeSoto Brown. You're here with me again, DeSoto.
I am. I'm smiling at being referred to as a cultural treasure.
You are.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
When we finished our first show, even though the camera stopped rolling, we continued to talk story. There was so much to talk about.
Of course.
And you know, when we talk about history, we're in Hawaii. Everywhere we look, there's Ōlelo. Every mountain has a story. Every ocean, pohaku have stories.
Yes.
What's the importance of knowing our history here? Hawaiian or non-Hawaiian?
Yeah. Well, knowing your history means you have some sense of where you come from. Mm-hmm. You have some sense of how you fit in. You have some sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. Even if you've just gotten here, it's helpful to know, where am I? What's going on here? Mm-hmm. Who was here before me, and what did they do?
Right.
And the fact that, as you just said, our landscape shows us all of these things too. We just have to learn all the stories about them. And unfortunately, many of those stories were only taught by people speaking them and not written down. So it's a sad thing to think about sometimes how much we don't know about the environment that we live in.
But a place we can go that we do know we can learn, if we look at our first image coming up, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at Bishop Museum, Bernice Pauahi Bishop Museum. That is where I work. Bishop Museum, as we stated in our last show, opened in 1891. So it's been open for well over 100 years. And it is a repository of not only Hawaiian materials, Hawaiian mo'olelo, Hawaiian knowledge, but also things from throughout the Pacific. And it's a multidisciplinary collection in that we have things created by people, but we've also got the natural environment. We have plants, we have animals, we have insects, we have mollusks, all of these things that are part of our environment.
I want to take a look at our next image, because that also, when you walk into Hawaii Hall, every floor is telling you something about where we live.
Absolutely.
Do you still get chicken skin when you walk through there?
Oh, yes. And there are 3 floors in Hawaiian Hall, which was opened in 1903. And when we redid Hawaiian Hall in its entirety, which was in the early 2000s, we did a renovation of the entire building, all new exhibitry. One of my coworkers came up with the concept of each floor in Hawaiian Hall represents a different traditional Hawaiian realm, because Hawaiians saw the world as being composed of different realms. So each floor has a different theme, and all of the exhibits and all of the artifacts on that floor adhere to that theme.
And how has that been embraced by visitors and community?
People really like it.
Yeah.
It is very, very gratifying to see what people write in the comments book of how much they learned, how much they didn't know, that they came away knowing a lot more about, how fascinated they were, how touched they were, and how they felt such a connection in learning so many of these stories about this place. And also people who aren't from here saying how fascinating all of our stories are, how fascinating our history is, and how rich it is.
I know when I walk through Hawaii Hall, there's always something new to see, there's always something new to learn, but there's also that energy that's there.
Yeah.
There is mana in that building.
I think so too, because it's the work of so many people in the past. It's the things that they created, it's the knowledge that they gathered, it's the knowledge they passed on, and the physical things that they touched, that they worked with, that they handled, that belonged to them, that they wore. I don't think you can come away without feeling some of that. And the building itself is, again, over 100 years old.
Yep.
So many things have happened in it. And it's seen so much, it's experienced so much.
Yep. No, it's a magical place. I want to take a look at our next image, because it pertains exactly to the work that you do. And far off in the corner, is that you I see?
Yeah, so standing in the far left wearing a black jacket, that is me. Yep. And that's me working in Bishop Museum archives in what was then our public reference room. So this is in the 1990s. I've been at Bishop Museum for many years now. I've been there for over 35 years as a full-time employee. So I've helped a lot of people and handled many collections. So this is me working with people who are coming in to do research and learn from what we've got.
You know, the archives, one of the things with community, I know when they go there, they want everything accessible. They want, I want this for this, and I want this project and that. Is that difficult for you as an archivist? Because it's not a public domain kind of.
Well, it can be.
Yeah.
Because everybody who comes in has a different need. They are working on something different. They are learning something different. People are learning about their genealogy. People are learning about the physical environment. People are working on videos. People are writing theses, and just all different kinds of stuff. And one of the things that we have to deal with a lot is, and it's understandable, people don't know what we have. People also sometimes have the misconception that, well, I need a photograph of this, so it must exist.
Yeah.
So you need to give me the picture of this happening. And sometimes you have to say, there is no such picture.
There's no picture of Kamehameha the First.
I was asked years ago if there were films of Kamehameha the First. And I had to say, no, Kamehameha the First died in 1819. Films weren't invented until almost 100 years later.
Yeah.
So no, there aren't any.
But you know that process, well, I wanted to say a little bit more about Bishop Museum, and I want to go back into our community. But with the Bishop Museum, I feel like it's an underutilized resource in our community. I wish more people would go.
Yes, and that is true. We do welcome people to come in and do research. It's not just the public areas. You can make appointments. You can come to the archives. We're open twice a week, Tuesday afternoons and Saturday mornings. So people can come in and do research without an appointment. We do have a limited capacity, so you can't just necessarily walk in and get in.
Right.
But nonetheless, yes, you can do so. What we are working towards, and I think every museum is putting more and more of our resources online as scans so that you don't have to physically come to Bishop Museum to see things. If you live on another island, it's not cheap to come to Oahu and stay here, but also it preserves the objects. It preserves the collection so that we don't have to take them out and people don't have to touch. The
Right.
less you touch things, the less you move them, the better you are preserving them.
Well, you move into this area that I want to talk about, which is communities throughout the islands now start wanting to create their own museums, their own digital libraries. What do you have to say about that?
The more digital material that's online, the better. And the beauty is, again, digital assets mean that you do not necessarily have to take on the responsibility of the preservation of the physical objects. And I do have to say, people don't, I think, understand how much work that is. Yep. It is a 24/7 responsibility to preserve these things. And that's preserving them from insects, it's preserving them from temperatures, it's preserving them from humidity, it's preserving them from fire, it's preserving them from water. All of that stuff. It's very expensive and it's very time consuming. If you can scan it, all the better.
Or if it's an archaeological piece, if you can take a photo of it.
Yes.
And take really great photos and post that online. And you know, when we look at communities and we look at our history here in Hawaii, I think sometimes we look at history being in the 1800s, right? And it stops there. And your work and your books actually look at Hawaii in the 20th century. But one of the things that I've gotten into is Hawaiian soda bottles.
Yes.
And Hawaiian or Hawaii
milk
bottles.
Yes.
Something simple like that. I've been fascinated by this story.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us more
Sure.
about that?
And this is something that, again, is so common in every day. You think, soda bottle, so what?
Yeah.
Well, in fact, every kind of artifact that you find like that, particularly if it's from daily life in the past, tells us a whole bunch of things. So the fact that there are multiple dairies that you can find bottles for, as well as the milk bottle caps, shows you that at one time there were quantities of small dairies on the island of Oahu. We were not importing milk.
Right.
We were generating milk on this island, putting it in bottles and drinking it right near where the cows were producing it. That's not true anymore. The artifacts like that tell you that story. The soda bottles, again, we see that this is a type of technology that comes to the Hawaiian Islands, and we were remarkably early adapters many times of new types of innovative technologies. The fact that there are multiple small soda companies that bottle obscure brands that you've never heard of before shows you that you expect to take, have a can of a soda, a carbonated beverage. Well, people were doing that more than 100 years ago as well, right here.
I love that they're a part of the community, that you weren't traveling outside of your community to get your soda. So why were you there? Were you on a plantation? Were you in a remote place? And I was really fascinated as I started to collect them. It's also a cheap hobby too. But I felt like I was getting a piece of each community by each soda bottle. You know, these everyday things in our life. One of the things I want to talk about, and if we could look at our next graphic, is another thing that tells a story, and that's menus.
Oh, yeah.
We have just a whole bunch of different menus showing here. What do menus tell us about Hawaii?
Well, menus tell us a variety of interesting things. First of all, they tell us what the prices of things were. And you can see that some things were expensive and some things were inexpensive. But the foods that are listed on the menus can be astonishing. And one of the things that's very pertinent for Maunalua is you can find old menus where mullet is on the menu. That means that mullet is available at the fish market in quantities that you can put it on your menu as a permanent item.
Yeah, it's not there as a special of the day.
No, it's not special of the day. We sell mullet all the time. Where's it coming from? It's coming from fish ponds. It's coming from functioning fish ponds like Kuapa that were still producing fish into the 1950s. So these menus show us, and also produce and other types of things that today you don't see. Another thing we talked about, frogs' legs were commonly on menus. Why? Because there were lo'i that were still producing kalo, and frogs live in the lo'i to where you can cultivate them and cut them up and cook their legs.
And something else that's on the menu is turtle.
Oh, that's another astonishing thing. It doesn't show up that much. Usually it is a special, but some restaurants had it all the time. Well, turtles are protected now. You cannot go out and kill them, but they were a source of food. And again, there was a time when fishermen were just bringing in turtles, just like regular fish and everything else from the ocean, and it shows up on menus.
You know, as I was looking at the menus to put some graphics together for today, that's the thing that hit me. What was on the menu, what wasn't a special, and all the different fish that you can actually see the change of what's happening in our ocean.
Yes.
And to see mullet no longer there.
Yes.
Hundreds and hundreds of years of mullet fed our people, and all of a sudden
it's all gone.
It's all gone.
I know, it's astonishing.
Yeah.
And the fact that it continued to exist into the modern era, continued to exist during my lifetime.
Yeah.
And now, mullet, you can't just go buy mullet.
No.
Or order it, much less order it in a restaurant.
Yeah, and then another thing, I want to take a look at our next graphic, because this is something else that's very telling. These are Hawaiian license plates.
They certainly are.
Tell me about what we're looking at.
Okay, well, this is one of the things that I personally collect. These are not my license plates. This is a collection that exists in the American mainland. But we've been issuing license plates since 1915. And again, this is evidence of how far back automobiles go and to show how pervasive automobiles are. Every year, for many years, a new license plate was issued. So you didn't put a sticker on your license plate, you got a whole new plate.
Oh, okay, now I get it. So, and they're beautiful.
They are, they're very colorful.
Absolutely beautiful.
And they changed the colors every year, the color combination changed every year, but it meant that thousands of tons of metal license plates are having to be shipped here every year. And it means that you use them for 1 year and throw them away. I mean, that's the type of, that's wasteful.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be doing that.
We shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take a look at the next image, because licenses are important to you, but so are vehicles. If we can look at our next image, and there you are.
Well, I like old cars too.
Yes.
And this is my mother's 1954 Chevrolet station wagon, and that's me at the age of 5 in 1959, posing for a picture. And I'm sure my mother said, "Okay, smile," and I did that little thing with my head. And my mother kept this car for 50 years.
That's a killer car. Let's look at our next image, because you went from that to this.
That's me in my first car. That was a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle. And I loved that car. My dad bought it new and eventually gave it to me after a few years because I drove it all the time. And unfortunately, it came to an untimely end on the H1 freeway in June of 1978 when I had a significant car crash and it ended up upside down.
Oh.
And that was the end of it. But I survived because I was always wearing my seatbelt, even before it was required by law.
Wow.
So I was, and I got to be an official seatbelt survivor representing my home state of Hawaii at a publicity event in Washington, D.C. in 1986.
Oh my gosh.
Composed of seatbelt survivors throughout the United States.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
Let's go to our next image because it tells a little bit more about you and your love of license plates.
So this is me in the Hawaii State Archives in 1978. And what I'm holding up is what's called a sample plate, meaning that the manufacturer made this and sent it to the Hawaiian Islands to say, this is what their next license plates are going to look like. So this is one of a kind, and it survived in the records in the state archives, in the files, and I was able to see it, and my friend took a picture of me holding it.
Awesome. Let's look at our next image. And I really love these license. I love how Hawaii is written on the 26th
Exactly.
plate.
So again, particularly in the 1920s, they hadn't established a lot of sort of standards yet. So from year to year, license plates in many places changed dramatically from one year to the next. After a while, you can see from 1927 onwards, they pretty much follow the same pattern. It's either on the top or the bottom, and every year there's a different color combination. And these 4 license plates happen to be from my collection, and I treasure them.
The colors and the graphics are so beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at your collection of license plates,
Yes.
among many other things
Yes.
you have at your house, I was thinking, gosh, how do you keep track of all that?
With difficulty.
I was going to say
It's
that
not all
must
computerized, no.
Yeah. Well, I want to look at our next image because again, we talk about stories within a photo. Tell me the story of what we see here on in this photo.
Okay, so this is just a snapshot that somebody took of 2 automobiles and a local family, the man with 3 young boys. You can see on the right, there is a license plate, and it is a 1927 license plate. So we know that's when this picture was taken. We also know, because that license plate starts with the number 2, that this picture was taken in Hawaii County.
Oh.
So this is a Big Island photograph.
Oh, wow.
And it also shows, I like to think, that this is, at this point, regular people can afford to own automobiles. It's not just wealthy people anymore. So now it's just the regular middle class and less well-to-do people who own cars. And that's how pervasive cars got to be.
Yeah, I mean, what a change it brought. And even in our next image, I wanted to have you take a look at. Looking at this next image coming up, again, is another family.
Right.
And what a car means to them.
Exactly.
And that looks like a plantation-style house.
It looks like a plantation-style house, but that is actually a kind of an expensive car. That's a Chrysler.
Oh, wow.
And this is a picture from 1948. And again, you can see that on the license plate. And because the first number on this plate is a 4, that means this was taken on Kauai.
Wow.
Because our license plates have always had a certain number or letter that designates which county they were issued in. So this is, again, the type of thing, when I talk about analyzing photographs, there's a lot that, when you just glance at a picture, there's a lot of information you might not be aware of. When you look more closely, there are stories for everything.
Okay, how do you just walk out of your house and not be distracted by stories around you?
I am.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily, but I'm more interested in historical things. But I try to keep...
But there's so much of that here. That's what
Oh,
I'm
I
saying.
know,
When you walk out,
exactly.
you're like, okay, there's this building, there's this architecture,
Yeah,
there's a
exactly.
sword
Yeah.
cap that has a date
Yeah.
on it. There's,
Yeah.
you know, all these different things.
I know. This is true. And I try to keep track of, when did this get demolished? When was this new thing built? I take pictures. I sometimes write stuff down. I think I'll remember things. Some stuff I do, many things I don't.
What is a thing right now in your life that's really making you go in a direction of following a passion of learning about something new?
I would say I'm learning about lots of different things via the things that I deal with in the archives at Bishop Museum. So when I get to read, for example, a document or an old manuscript, particularly also photographs, because I'll encounter a photograph and I'll say, just like I did with the pictures we just looked at, where did this come from? When was it taken? Who are the people in it? What can I learn from it? And then particularly because we're working with a lot of social media today, and I'm trying to, again, disseminate things to the rest of the world, what can I write about this picture? if you just see this picture for the first time, what can I tell you about it? What can I tell you that will interest you or fascinate you or at least attract your attention? And so that you know a story that I can tell you.
I was thinking about the work that we do in Maunalua and with ŌleloNet in talking to Kumpuna, in working with their pictures. And what you're saying is exactly what I do in an interview, which is, what are we looking at here? What year is this? You know, why you see it here on this rock? Why is this pohaku important, not that one? And they really start unlocking the stories of the aina that's around you or the ocean that's around you, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's how we learn, because many things are never written down. Many things are not recorded. If you can record those or write those down from people who know the stories, do it.
What is something that, like, for anyone watching, you're saying, write it down, record it. For yourself and everything that you have, what are you going to do? Where is it going? Sorry.
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
No, I do want my collections, I don't want my collections to be broken up. I don't want to sell them. I want them to be kept so that they can be in a place where they're publicly accessible and or they get digitized and put out to the world. One of the things that I've really focused on in my collecting for over 50 years has been tourist literature, promotional literature. A lot of that stuff was produced in huge quantities, given away for free, but then wasn't saved because people threw it away.
Right.
But it tells us so much. And again, if you analyze what are the words that they're using, what are the images that they're using, who are they trying to sell this to, and how are they doing it? There's a lot of fascination in that. Plus, graphically, as you said, license plates are very colorful. Even the covers of menus, for example. But all of this paper stuff, sometimes it's very beautiful. Sometimes it's kind of peculiar. Sometimes you can look at it and think, I find this offensive, how they portrayed Hawaiian people or Hawaiian culture.
Right.
But even if it's offensive, you need to know that it happened. You need to know that that's part of history, and you need to be able to see it and learn from it.
You know, when you said that, I was thinking of all these images that we see in the selling of the romance of Hawaii, whether it be Waikiki, Hawaii Island, Kauai, whatever it is. And it's selling romance, but like you said, sometimes it's offensive.
Yes.
But you can't turn away from that.
No, and you need to know that it existed. And that's one of the most important things about history. You do not destroy and cover up the things that are bad. Because if you do that, you're just assisting the people who will claim it never happened. You have to keep the things to be able to say, it did happen, and this is proof of it. The development of our land around us, pictures of bulldozers at work, pictures of things that, how they existed beforehand, and then after they got developed or built on. This is how we learn what happened and where did it go.
And those times when it is painful, you know, it is heartbreaking work sometimes, because you come across imagery and you're like, they destroyed these people's homes, they destroyed this land, and people don't want to talk about it. But you have to talk about it, because that pain has to be moved into a place where change can happen that's positive.
And you also need to document that it happened, and you need to remember who got affected by it. If you do not keep that evidence, you are negating those people's existence.
Exactly. That's how I feel too. Like when we talk about like the destruction of a fish pond or a destruction of a cultural site, that is heartbreaking on its own. But the second part of that, if we forget it, then what happens?
Then there's no memory of it, and it's as though it never happened.
Yeah.
And people can say, that wasn't there.
Yeah.
You say that was a fish pond? No, that wasn't a fish pond. It's always been a subdivision.
Yeah, yes. Or names, the importance of names and the changing of names and how it changes the whole story.
There are so many names that we've lost. And you can find in old documents, particularly for land grants, people will talk about very specific, very small areas that had specific names. In many cases, you will find these names in old publications or documents, and we don't even know where they were.
Yeah, it's every little bit is a part of a puzzle, and you start putting those pieces together. And I think the internet, you know, for all of it, it brings into your life. You know, it's not always good.
Exactly.
But in doing this kind of work. Someone might post a family picture from their family from like the 1920s that you've never seen this picture of, say, Kohe Lepe Lepe before, right? And all of a sudden you're like, I've never seen this. So that kind of stuff is exciting to me. Are you the same?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, again, there are so many things that we don't know about. And when you finally come across a photograph of it and say, that's what it looked like, that's where it was.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be ancient. It can be, the gas station used to be on that corner.
Right.
Or this is where the market was. I've seen ads for this market, but I never knew where it was. And it's, 75 years ago, it's gone now. But by chance, here's a photograph, and now I can see where it was.
Right. I mean, it is amazing. And it's,
And wonderful.
Yeah.
And uplifting and exciting.
It totally is. When you get, when I find a photo I've never seen before of part of East Oahu, I'm like, oh my God, this is treasure.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
And particularly for a place like what you're talking about, where people didn't live, a lot of people weren't there, so there are no pictures, there are no reason to take pictures.
Yeah.
So there frequently are not photographs of places that weren't inhabited. There also are not pictures of things that were really commonplace. People don't take pictures. Do you go out and take pictures of fast food restaurants?
No.
No, but
I have the wrappers in my truck from eating there.
Well, yeah, but that's my point.
Yeah.
We go to those restaurants all the time. They're going to go away and be replaced by other ones, but if we don't document them, we won't know it.
So our show is called Maunalua Past, Present, and Future. And that's what we're trying to do, to document, to have you part and share with us. And so that's so important for all of you out there who want to learn about Maunalua. These kind of discussions need to happen and need to happen in every community.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. And there are so many places to look for information. Now that newspapers.com exists, we can look in newspapers, which have all kinds of things. And the beauty of that is, it's not just the articles, it's the ads as well.
The ads are fascinating.
The ads are fascinating, and particularly when we're talking about development, there are subdivision ads. We know when they opened.
So we're going to subdivide this conversation because we're just about at the end.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine.
So I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight on our talk story. If you want to learn more, you can go to directors@hawaiikaihui.org. I want to thank DeSoto Brown for being with us, and thank you for spending your time with us. Take care. Aloha.